Humans are about to learn a lesson that we've never learned before in human history. Can you guess what that is? It is absolute scarcity. Absolute scarcity. Never had anything like that before. And so when people are comparing, I know gold's ripping right now, and shout out to the gold holders out there, doing pretty well. But long term, Bitcoin's going to absolutely destroy gold. Why? Because there's a big difference between kind of scarce, like gold, pretty scarce, like gold, and absolutely scarce, like Bitcoin. So this is the number here, and we're going to see this number a lot. This is going to be a very big part of the visionaries community. I might put this on a hoodie. Just this number, no other context to it. This number is going to be very important as we move forward here. So this is the upper limit of how many sats will ever exist. So let's use this number. Let's use this number here. No, that's the wrong one. That's the wrong one. That's the wrong one. Okay, so this is the upper limit. No, we don't want that number. We want the full one. There we go. Let's add a little decimal. Oh, what did I do there? Okay. So that's the upper limit. So how do we go about this here? Because I was thinking about this the other day. I know that there's like a theory out there. There's speculation that about 3 or 4 million Bitcoin have been lost throughout time, but it's really just a speculation. And the thing is that we might actually never know how many Bitcoin are actually available versus how many have been lost or burned. So I was thinking about a couple different things here, and I just want to demonstrate the true ownership of Bitcoin. Because when let's just maybe start with this. Let's say that you have your stake. Let's say that you have 5 million sats. No, we want this as a number. There we go. So your stake, so your percentage of the world. This is going to assume that Bitcoin one day, if you subscribe to this theory, then you're going to enjoy this. If you don't, then you're probably just going to call me an idiot or shut this off. But my theory here and what this whole thing is based off of is that Bitcoin will eventually become a unit of account, because it goes from a collectible, which I would argue that we're still in that phase right now, because how many people on the planet actually understand Bitcoin? Guess, like how many people would you say? 100,000 maybe? Don't confuse understanding Bitcoin with owning Bitcoin. How many people actually understand Bitcoin right now? Maybe 10,000 out of 8 billion. It's a very, very low percentage. So I would argue that Bitcoin is actually still in a collectible stage. Even though most people think we're in a store of value, I would argue that we're actually still in the collectible stage, just based on how few people actually understand what Bitcoin is. So then we move to a store of value. And then we're going to move to a medium of exchange. And there's already people out there who have written off Bitcoin becoming a medium of exchange. But that's the next stage here, or actually the next stage of Bitcoin, which is medium of exchange. Why? Because as Bitcoin becomes the best store of value, then the people who are actually adding value to the world, who are producing things or services, they're going to want to accept the best store of value. Why would they accept something? Why would they accept dog shit that they have to go and take their time to convert into the best store of value? Why wouldn't they just accept the best store of value? So it's going to be the businesses, it's going to be the people who actually provide value to the world, who make this transition from store of value to medium of exchange within Bitcoin. And then from there, once it's being used as a medium of exchange, it becomes a unit of account, which means that every asset, thing, hour that exists is going to be priced in Bitcoin, priced in sats, which means that every asset, everything, every hour is going to be divided by this number here. That's what a unit of account is. And so whatever price, when you look at your app and it says $113,000, it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. It's the current exchange rate between dollars and Bitcoin, but it's irrelevant. Because all these assets, all these things, all these hours of productivity, all this time is going to be priced in this number. So that's kind of the underlying thesis here, is that Bitcoin one day eventually will become a unit of account. And so your percentage in the world at this point, it's going to be very small. Yes, but there's also a lot of people on the planet. So if we take this as a percentage here, I'm glad we did a little bit of warm-up math before to kind of get my brain functioning here. So we want to add decimal places. So if you had 5 million sats right now, today, this would essentially be your minimum share of the planet, which is kind of cool. And the closest thing to this would be gold. And so if you said something along the lines of, okay, well, I own 3 ounces of gold. The exchange rate for fiat right now is about $12,000 for that. You could figure out how many ounces of gold exist today. You could take your 3 ounces of gold and you could figure out what your percentage of the world is in gold terms. But the problem with that is that there's no fixed supply of gold. There's scarcity of it. There's about 2% new gold added to the world every day. But over time, your percentage, if you have the same 3 ounces of gold, your percentage is just going to keep going down and down and down and down and down, even with gold. With fiat, that number goes down every second of every day if you're storing your wealth in fiat terms. But when you look at it in Bitcoin terms, this number, if you have 5 million sats right now, your percentage of the world, that number will never go down. It cannot go down. As long as you hold on to these 5 million sats, this number can never go down, which is a pretty big deal. So what I'm trying to demonstrate today is that this number is actually much, much lower than we think it is. So your percentage of the world, even today, is much higher than you think it is. So what I'm not going to do here is I'm not going to pretend that strategy coins, even though they have 650,000 Bitcoin, which would be, what is that? A lot of billions of sats, or would it be trillions of sats? Doesn't matter. We're not including those in here. Those aren't lost Bitcoin. Strategy owns those. So at any point, strategy could decide that they want to dump those onto the market. So we cannot consider those to be lost Bitcoin. That's not what we're focused on in this episode. Even though they're probably not going to be moving for a very long time, they're pretty much off the market. We still have to consider them as available. So there's a couple different things here. I would say there's 3 things that have caused people to lose their sats. So number 1 is just simply forgetting the keys, locking themselves out of their Bitcoin. Number 2 is not valuing the Bitcoin, which would also be kind of not forgetting, but just losing the keys because you don't actually value the Bitcoin. And number 3 is not understanding the process. So these 3 things here have lost a lot of Bitcoin. Number 1, forgetting the keys. I've seen this happen plenty of times so far in my own life, which is where people just either overcomplicate their Bitcoin setup and they lose their keys, or they put it on a piece of paper and their maid throws that piece of paper in the garbage. Not understanding the Bitcoin. This would have been something that happened very, very, very early on in Bitcoin. An example of this would be when Max Kaiser sent 5,000 Bitcoin to Alex Jones. This is a parent. So it's not for sure, but there's probably been many cases like this in the past. And Alex Jones, is that his name? Alex Jones? Why does that name not sound familiar now that I say it? Alex Jones. Pretty sure. But he didn't value the Bitcoin. Max sent him 5,000 Bitcoin, and I'm pretty sure he just lost it because he didn't know what he was holding. And think about how many instances in the past there were of that, where let's say there was a Bitcoin meetup and there was 100 people in the crowd, and whoever was putting on the Bitcoin presentation was like, here, have some Bitcoin. Everybody in the crowd today is going to get 1 Bitcoin just for being here. And because those people didn't value the Bitcoin, they probably just threw that paper wallet in the trash when they got home, or they lost it when they moved to a new house. So there's many instances like that have happened in the past, especially very early on in Bitcoin, when we didn't really know what was going to happen with this. There was also a website where you could go to, and as long as you put in a Bitcoin address, you could get 5 Bitcoin. And again, think of how many people at that point who actually went to that website, pasted in their address, got 5 Bitcoin, but then lost the keys to that wallet because they didn't value the Bitcoin. And then the third one here, which is probably a little bit more prevalent these days, which would be not understanding the process. And I want you to think about this yourself. And I'm hoping there's actually a lot of people watching this right now. So I'm hoping to get some feedback from the chat right now. So not understanding the process. An example of this would be you set up a wallet of Satoshi or a Coinos account or whatever, and you didn't back it up properly. Or a Naka wallet, you didn't write down the 12 words. Or a Moon wallet, you didn't write down the 8 words because you didn't understand the process. And then something happened. Either you lost your phone or you updated to a new phone. And as you updated, all of those sats, because you actually didn't back up your account, or you weren't able to, if it was like a custodial wallet, then you just lost out on tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of sats. So here's my question to you, because we're going to build this into the equation here. My question to you: how many sats have you lost? You, one person out there, how many sats have you lost? For me, I would say it's about, and I've wasted a lot of sats. I think it was about 200,000 sats on one Bitcoin transaction one time because I had so many UTXOs. But that's not lost sats. That's just me being a dummy and wasting sats to somebody who's smarter than me. But that's not how many sats have you lost. I would say that I've probably lost about 75,000 sats that I'm aware of. It's probably more. I've probably set up wallets that I just forgot that I had. But I would say 75,000 sats minimum. But how many, for anybody out there watching in the chat right now, how many sats, what's your best estimate of how many you've lost? And if you've lost 0, then all the power to you. Hopefully this show has helped you with that. But how many sats do you think you've actually lost? Like you've forgot the key to it, you locked yourself out of it, you updated your phone, but you forgot to transfer the Bitcoin out of your wallet before you updated it. Many things. That it happened to me. 30,000 sats I had on a wallet of Satoshi on an old phone, and I couldn't load wallet of Satoshi, and so those sats are just gone forever. I fumbled Bitcoin hard in 2013 and didn't revisit till 2020. I've sold them and paid transaction fees, but that's it. I've donated and sent sats, but I've never lost a single one. Wow. Okay. Well, you guys are kind of destroying my theory here a little bit. I would have expected, and I know some people in my own life, that the range would be between probably 200,000 sats and probably 20 million sats. Maybe higher than that, probably 50 million sats. So then if you think about let's think about every person who owns Bitcoin right now. How many people do you think on the planet own Bitcoin? Millions probably, right? So there's millions of people out there right now. And let's focus on this part, the people who are here right now. Let's just say that the average person has lost 50,000 sats. Might be higher, like I said. Some people I know have lost 200,000 to 50 million sats. But let's say that the average is even 50,000 sats. So let's take 2 million. Let's say there's 2 million people who own Bitcoin out there. Actually, let's ask AI instead of me trying to guess. Let's make this legit. So if we go to this, and then we open up a new tab here, approximately how many people own Bitcoin today? Number of Bitcoin owners, 106 million. Wow, I said 2 million. Wow, okay, never mind. I think my theory is going to be proven more accurate than I thought. So 106 million people. That's a big number. Again, those aren't Bitcoiners, though. Those are just people who have Bitcoin wallets. That doesn't mean that they understand Bitcoin. That doesn't mean they're not going to sell Bitcoin when the price runs up, or they don't know, or they know how to hold their keys to their Bitcoin. So let's go on the very low end of this. Let's go on the very low end of this. So let's go 5 million. 5 million people times 50,000 sats. I see Buck 52 lost 100,000 in an experiment. I know people who have lost Bitcoin, not sats, but Bitcoin before. 5 million times. Let's go 50,000. What the hell? 1, 2, 3 times. So this is 5 million people, which is on the very low end of how many people who own Bitcoin, times 50,000 sats, which is probably the average of how many people or how many sats have been lost by the average Bitcoiner. So this is going to be a big number here. What is that? 250 billion sats. That's just this. That's number 3. So forgetting the keys, I don't know how we would calculate that one. That's a hard one. But let's say that let's just take one example of somebody who didn't understand the value of Bitcoin, which is Alex Jones. So 5,000 times well, how many sats are in one Bitcoin? 100 million. So that's a pretty big number as well. So that's 750 billion sats gone. That's pretty much low end, the absolute lowest end. But the point of this is that if we now take, let's move this up a little bit. Okay, it's a good thing I started this when I did. So this number minus this, and then minus this. And the other thing here too, again, this is the very, 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 very low end of this estimate. See, it hardly changed overall. But the other point of this too is like when the bull run of this year happens, whatever it is, October, November, December 2026, who knows? There's going to be a huge influx of people buying Bitcoin. There's going to be millions of new people buying Bitcoin who have no idea what they're doing. So the people here, there's going to be a lot more people who forget their keys. There's not going to be as many people who don't value the Bitcoin. This is kind of like an early thing in Bitcoin. No longer the case though. If somebody gave you one Bitcoin today, you're probably going to figure out how to keep that thing because it has much more value. Back in the day though, people would visit a website, they'd get a Bitcoin, and then they'd forget about it next month, and that Bitcoin's gone forever. And there's going to be a lot of people who do not understand the process today of backing up their keys, their Lightning wallets, their 12 words. There's probably going to be more hacks, but that's not lost Bitcoin. We're talking about specifically lost Bitcoin here. So this is all going to go up significantly too. But that's not the point. The point is that this number here, your percentage of the world, as that number goes up, as this goes from 250 billion to 251 billion to 260 billion lost, this number goes down. And so your revised stake of the world is now this stake, your amount, your 5 million sats, that didn't change, but now it's against this number, which we're going to put into a percentage. And then we're going to add some decimal points. So your percentage went up there. And let's say that in the next cycle, this doubles or triples or quadruples. Let's just go doubles. Let's say that the people showing up, they lose some Bitcoin there. So this all of a sudden turns into this number minus this minus this. Put that in a number format. And then the new revised ownership here is your 5 million sats divided by this number. Put into a percentage, adding decimal points. So the purpose of this, why is that the same? Did I do something wrong? How is that the same number? 97. That doesn't make sense. That divided, that minus 823. Huh. Why did that number not change? Why did that not change? Oh, these are tied to the same. That's why. Okay. That would be why. So how do I delete that one now? This one should be, because this one changed too. Let's go like this. Couple more zeros, 2 more zeros. So this one, we're going to minus this one as well. Okay, so you can see your percentage here. This was the starting point. So this is today. This is the maximum, the lowest ownership of the world that you'll ever have. Assuming you keep these 5 million sats safe, this number is kind of like your minimum percentage of ownership here in the world. But as more and more people, when we start factoring these lost wallets in, and again, this is like an extremely low amount of lost sats. What is that even? 50 Bitcoin? I don't even know. But the point is that as these Bitcoin are lost, as these sats are lost in one of these 3 ways, forgetting the keys, not valuing the Bitcoin, and not understanding the process, the limit goes down. So that total amount of available sats goes down. Your stake stays the same, and therefore your percentage of ownership of the world, of the planet, continues to go up. It can never go down. It's important to understand that. Your ownership of the world will never go down. It will only go up if you're storing your wealth in Bitcoin. And if you have that 5 million sats protected, whatever that is, that could be 5 sats. That could be 5 sats. And you're still going to have a locked in ownership of the planet that will never go down. So again, that's kind of the summary today. The moral of the story is that we have no idea how many Bitcoin are actually lost out there, but we do know the maximum amount. And so if you figured that out, that's going to be the lowest amount of the planet that you will ever own, which is kind of a crazy concept if you think about it that way. But that's the minimum. And every sat that's lost because of forgetting the keys, not valuing the Bitcoin, or not understanding the process, every single sat that gets lost, your ownership goes up. Even if it's a very small percentage, your ownership will go up. It will never go down.